Hey folks, I think we're live here, but I have a button that won't go away, so I can't double check. Indeed, we are live. Hey everybody, Tara Bachland here with the Wifey Wake Up podcast, and any time of the day is a great time of the day to wake up. So hello and great to see you everybody. So today I'm talking about when he won't take care of his health. And I'm going to get rolling in a few minutes here. I think all of us women and men have been on either side of the coin, right? Well, you know which side of the coin that you've been on. Whether it's you are so concerned about your husband's health, or he's the one being told over and over how much you're concerned about his health. And, you know, it all, I think, comes from a good place, from a good heart. And I'm going to first quick address the guys. Like, where does this come from? Now, you guys, I think you're pretty smart. I mean, you can see through it. But sometimes when there's just so much concern coming your way from your wife, sometimes it can be hard to see what is underneath all of this. So this is actually for the guys and the gals here. I don't always say gals, but my husband is a Gen Xer and they say gals. So now I say gals. That is not my generation kind of thing, but now it's become a thing for me. So ladies and gents, and this is particular for the gents, but there's insight for the ladies, which is, where does this come from? Where does it can come across eventually as nagging, like your wife is just nagging, like, why are you eating that? Why did you go out to eat again? I found wrappers in your car again. I've heard all sorts of cases. And it's not that she wants to nag you. She's actually, underneath it all, she's concerned. And just to cut to the chase, I think the concern comes from a couple of places. First of all, if you are the breadwinner, the primary breadwinner, of course there is the concern about, what does this mean for our welfare? If something happens to you, you might have insurances in place, but that doesn't cover everything. And especially if you have, life is happening, right? You have kids, you have a household. What happens if something happens to you? And I have a story for you at the end of what happens when something does happen. And so it might seem selfish, which it might come from a selfish place where she's just concerned about herself. And it also may be quite legitimate in the sense of, I have all my eggs in this basket, and what if this basket not only falls apart, but basically explodes? And there are other dependents depending on me and on us. And so there are layers of concern. Now, granted, guys, I know we women tend to just worry, right? It's just a part of our nature. And that's not to say it's all okay. I think we really need to manage that in ourselves, but it is a very natural state. And I think, honestly, it is what has kept many people alive over the eons, that women see further ahead about our well-being and the family's well-being, and is concerned about that, and is about putting safety nets in place. Okay, so I just had to say that. Guys, you probably already know that, but it's hard sometimes to see through it when all the emotions are coming up. And ladies, I think it's super helpful. I know for me, when I assess and think, what is underneath all of this? What am I actually feeling? That really helps me to calm down, to really talk with my husband a lot better, and he's able to better listen. He's a great listener, but when, like you say, all the feels are coming up, it can be harder for him to listen. So I'm going to try to fire through this list here. So there may be a few reasons. So, okay, I'm going to start out here. The first thing is that there are so many approaches to health these days, and I'm in the health and wellness arena. I run a health and wellness and online education site, and it's specifically in the realm of herbalism. However, and then there's also naturopathy, but there's information coming out all the time on different approaches to health. So I think one thing that we need to consider as women is what we're thinking is a healthy approach. is that aligned with what he is thinking is a healthy approach for his body? And so that takes humility. It takes conversing. And and so I think it's something that's really important to consider, because we're all individuals. And you might not think that, I'll have a personal example here. My husband doesn't eat a lot of vegetables. And for years I would get on him for that. But what I also realize is that, and I've grown to realize over time, is that we have very distinct body types and we have different nutritional needs and how we get that nutrition. He, for example, eats a lot more fresh fruit than I do. For me, even then, those natural sugars is way too much sugar. So we obviously naturally differ in that way. And so that's something to really consider as well. And the other thing is, especially as I've gotten much busier in my own business, sometimes it's just a matter of time. And the main point that I want to get across here is different approaches to get the point across to your husband in a way that sounds loving, because it can very easily move into the realm of sounding like nagging. So how do you do that? Well, first of all, just conversing with him and saying, instead of saying, do this, don't do that, why'd you do that again, is just tune in and saying, how are you feeling? How are you doing lately? And really coming at it from, I know you care, right? I'm saying this to you ladies. I know you care. So inquire, ask how he's doing. How is he feeling? How could you help him in his health and wellness journey? What are some of his thoughts about health and wellness? Which philosophies does he follow? How might you differ? And then, maybe he doesn't have much of a response. Maybe he's so busy taking care of his day-to-day business and household, his end of the household, that it just doesn't even occur to him that much. And so then you might ask, how can I help? Where can I help you lead a healthier life? What do you think is a healthier life? What would you like to institute into your health and wellness routine, and how can I help there? Like I was saying, as my business and life got busier and busier in business, the factor of time just weighed in so much. Even just to schedule a massage, schedule a workout, that can be, you have to make a concerted effort. So for him, it might even be, can you help me, carve out, make an appointment even. It might even just be making an appointment for a certain practitioner, a massage, a chiropractor, a naturopath, something like that. And that way, it comes across as truly how I assume you actually feel, right? You care about him. And it's about his well-being first. And of course, the benefits trickle down. So a few things. You can also converse with him and share a few things that you've learned lately, the caring, that is sharing kind of approach. And I think when you come across with information, rather than you should do this or you should do that, if it's like, oh, I just listened to this podcast recently, it was really fascinating, or I implemented this into my lifestyle and it really seemed to help, that can be easier to receive than I think you should do this or you should do that. Again, it's worth repeating, how can I help? You might think that your life is super duper busy, and maybe it is, but that might just be the thing that really helps him start feeling better and start prioritizing his health as well. And again, another thing is just being humble that maybe you don't have all the answers, and you don't have all the answers for him, but you can help be there. You can be a sounding board. You can be someone that can help him along the way. Like I said, whether it's making an appointment, maybe it's making certain foods for him that can be very helpful. And then last, but definitely not least, there's a certain element of letting go. And I take a deep breath because I know how hard that can be. It is knowing that he's an adult, he's in charge of his own body and his own well-being, and that sometimes just by letting go makes room for other things to come into the scenario and help out. And letting go can be really tough. So I'm going to end here with a bit of a story. So a couple of years ago, my husband ended up in the hospital with a very severe condition where he actually had part of his large intestines rupture, and he ended up having sepsis, which is really a systemic infection. And I largely I've learned to let go. Plus, at that time in life, my business was so busy that I really didn't have time to worry about too much else. And so he was on the couch for a couple of weeks in a real severe and painful condition. And, in hindsight, I would have loved to, and I could have pushed myself to be available to him more. I mean, it wasn't totally distant and not available, but he's that kind of person. You probably have a guy like this too, where he was just going to grit it out, right? And I think that's a very admirable quality of guys, and it's also a really frustrating quality of guys, right? Where they're just going to be like, I can tough it out. I can take this on. I can do this, and not recognize when they actually need help. And my husband is really good at hiding it as well. And I was so distracted by the busyness, and this was like during COVID and all that stuff too. I was so busy with other things that I wasn't as in tune with him as I could have been or would have been otherwise. But it came to a point, and he had been on the couch for a week and a half at that point, and I said, if you start feeling pain, and we didn't know what it was at that point. And I said, if you start feeling pain in your kidneys, and I gestured where they are, you need to let me know. Because he was in a lot of pain. But I knew if it was something that was getting in his kidneys, I didn't see other symptoms. By the way, if someone is having intermittent chills and fever, that's a really bad sign. Like, take them to the clinic, at least urgent care. So I gave him a heads up, and I think this is where he was also in such a severe condition that it was between the severity of how he was realizing he was in a severe situation, and then also because I gave him a heads up. I said, if this keeps going for another day, I'm taking you in to urgent care. And it did. I checked in with him. I think I gave him 2 days. It was a Wednesday, and I knew, gosh, I better get him in, before the weekend hits. And it was Friday morning, and I checked in with him again, and he was for sure no better. And I said, it was like 7:30 in the morning. And I said, I'm going to take you into urgent care. And he said, okay. Now, anyone who knows my husband, for him to just say, okay, I was like, my jaw about hit the floor. But I was like, oh, great. Okay. And I didn't show my amazement. I quickly got ready. I don't even think I took a shower. Because I knew I didn't want him to change his mind. And I took him into the emergency room, actually urgent care. And after a few tests, they initially thought, of course, like his appendix ruptured or something like that, or his spleen ruptured. But no, actually his colon had ruptured. He had an abscess that had ruptured and had sepsis, akin to what happens when your appendix ruptures. This is very, very serious. And he later told me, a couple years later, he said, if you hadn't taken me in that day, he said, I might have died over the weekend, right? Every wife's worst nightmare. And not only that, I think at first we are concerned, like, what will I do without him, about the whole household and finances and stuff like that. But when it comes down to it and you think, what would my life be without him? What would it be like aside from all that, right? Aside from our physical well-being, what would your emotional state be like without your favorite person in your life to live life with? It is a very sobering experience to be face to face with that potential. And so how can I say You might be asking, how can I say, after my husband went through that experience, how can I still say, let go? And I can say that still because that there are other things, there's so many of my things in my life that I was trying to hang on to. And even at that point in life, I was trying to tell him to do certain things for his health. But the thing is, you ultimately don't have control anyways. You can be doing all the things that you think are healthy for you and someone gets in an accident, right? So ultimately, you have to let go anyways, just for your own sanity. And I needed to work on I got back to my spiritual development and self, and that helped above all. And so that actually was ultimately what helped me to truly let go and let God, you could say. And because we don't have control over it anyways. And most of all, if you are concerned about your husband's health or anyone in your life, that it truly comes across as in a loving way. They're more apt to make some changes. And also keeping the humility. I had to keep the humility for myself, especially being in the health and wellness realm. I thought I knew it all. Like, you're supposed to be eating this and taking that. But fortunately, my husband is very, very in tune with his own body, except for this one incident, apparently. But as far as taking supplements and so forth, that I have to trust in him as well. He's in his own body, and just to be humble enough to trust him in his own process as well. And ultimately, like I said, we don't have control. So it's better to let go of trying to have control in the first place. And most of all, show the actual love, that's where it's coming from. So much of it can come from a loving place, and eventually men might say, she's nagging me about my health. I know it. I know you're coming from a very loving place. And so the challenge is for you to make sure that it's coming across that way as well. Okay. I'm going to leave it there. Would love to hear your comments and questions on this. And most of all, just wishing you to tap into that love and helping it to come across truly how you mean it. And take care, everybody. All right. Bye-bye.